President Donald Trump is standing firmly by his demand for control of Greenland, but says he will not use force to take it. He made the remarks today at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. His comments came as talk of acquiring the Danish territory has intensified in recent weeks. Joining me now to talk more about this, Washington Stand reporter Casey Harper, who's been tracking this and other stories today. So, Casey, what's the latest on the president's push to secure Greenland? Has he gotten a green light yet?
There you go, Tony. That's a good one. Greenland, you're right. Greenland has been the talk of the town this week, if the town is Davos, where President Trump spoke to leaders at the World Economic Forum. And it was a very long speech, but he said that no nation or group of nations is in a position to take Greenland, let alone defend it, except the United States. Here's a clip from that speech.
We never asked for anything, and we never got anything. We probably won't get anything unless I decide to use excessive strength and force where we would be, frankly, unstoppable. But I won't do that. Okay? Now everyone's saying, oh, good. That's probably the biggest statement I made, because people thought I would use force. I don't have to use force. I don't want to use force. I won't use force.
Now, the president's right that that statement is the one that everyone was waiting to hear. Is he going to use military action to take Greenland? But that's not all that he said. He went on to say that he wanted immediate negotiations on U.S. acquisition of Greenland. And he keeps talking about Greenland being used as a territory for the Golden Dome missile defense system, something he's very passionate about. Now, the president has also talked about first 10% and then 25% tariffs on 8 EU nations if he doesn't get what he wants on Greenland. However, later today, after that speech, but later today, he announced that he had come up with a preliminary framework that the EU had agreed to, not just for Greenland, but for the greater Arctic region, which is going to put those tariffs on hold. Now, we don't know a lot of the details, Tony, on those, but we will be looking closely at them because, as you know, the devil is often in the details.
All right, yes, I don't think that story is going to go away anytime soon. While he was in Davos, he was also discussing the Gaza Board of Peace. That's something we're going to take a look at a little bit later, too, with Larry Taunton, who is in Switzerland. All right, back to the states here. Minnesota, the site of almost a growing federal investigation into fraud. What's the latest we hear coming out of Minnesota?
Yeah, Tony. So this all started, I just want to remind us, that this all started with that $9 billion in taxpayer fraud that was carried out in large part by the Somali community that's now under the microscope. Well, today, the House Judiciary Committee on Crime and Federal Government Surveillance, they held a hearing digging into the extent of those fraud schemes and how the federal government was exploited so heavily. And some of the testimony was pretty amazing, or alarming, rather. But so during the hearing, one witness who was a former police officer and fraud investigator said that they're working through federal agencies and looking into this. They learned that millions of dollars, get this, Tony, millions of dollars in cash was being flown out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport by Somali carriers. We're talking suitcases full of cash. In fact, they found that $70 million have been documented leaving the U.S. in just 6 months alone. And here's Congressman Andy Biggs on that fraud investigation.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has noted that the department is currently investigating where Minnesota's taxpayer dollars are being placed. Additional reports show that Somali individuals in the United States send roughly $215 million abroad each year. DOJ has now undertaken extensive investigative action, which includes issuing over 1,750 subpoenas, executing more than 130 search warrants, and conducting more than 1,000 witness interviews.
Well, that crackdown does seem warranted when you hear stories like that. And the DOJ subpoenas, they include the offices of the Minnesota's governor and attorney general, as well as the mayors of Minneapolis and St. Paul, which are alleging that they are obstructing the immigration crackdown that's come as a result of this fraud. But Tony, I can't help but wonder when you hear about all these testimonies that continue to come out, more and more details, when there's this much smoke, I think there's going to be a lot more fire that we find.
Yeah, we need to start looking at some of those suitcases. All right, Casey, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate the update.